The conference room felt like a fishbowl. I sat there, gripping my coffee cup, while Kara's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Some people here think working 80 hours a week makes them a hero," she said, her eyes landing directly on me. "I call it sad." Laughter erupted around the table. My face burned hot as everyone turned to look at me. I forced my lips into what I hoped looked like a smile, but inside, my stomach twisted into knots. One coworker whispered "workaholic" under their breath, loud enough for me to hear. The CEO sat at the far end of the table, his expression unreadable. He didn't laugh, but he didn't defend me either. I wanted to disappear into my chair. Kara kept talking about work-life balance and healthy boundaries, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She had just humiliated me in front of the entire leadership team, and she was enjoying every second of it. I stared down at my coffee, watching the steam rise. My pulse thundered in my ears. This wasn't just a casual comment. This was a calculated attack, and everyone in that room knew it. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to fight back. I wanted to tell them about all the projects I'd saved, all the late nights that kept this company running. I wanted to list every time Kara had taken credit for my work. But I didn't. Years of professionalism held my tongue. Instead, I clenched my pen so tightly that my knuckles turned white and started to ache. The metal bit into my palm, but somehow that pain felt better than the humiliation burning in my chest. The meeting moved on to budget discussions, but Kara kept glancing at me like she'd just scored a touchdown. Her smile was sharp and victorious. She'd made her point clear to everyone. I was the problem employee who didn't know when to stop. I swallowed my pride and took notes like nothing had happened. But inside, I was already making a promise to myself. I would remember this moment exactly as it happened. Every word, every laugh, every face that had turned to stare at me. They thought I was just a workaholic with no life. They had no idea what was coming. My name is Scarlett Turner. I'm 32 years old, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio where hard work wasn't just valued, it was survival. My parents worked double shifts at the factory just to keep food on the table. I was the first person in my family to work in corporate America. When I started at this company 5 years ago, I believed that results mattered more than politics. I thought if you worked hard enough, saved enough projects, and stayed late enough nights, people would respect you for it. In the beginning, they did. My manager back then praised me for turning around failing projects. The executives noticed when I pulled all-nighters to meet impossible deadlines. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just doing what felt right. But somewhere along the way, that dedication became a target painted on my back. When Kara became my manager 18 months ago, everything changed. She saw my work ethic as a threat, not an asset. Now, sitting in my cubicle after that humiliating meeting, I realized I'd been naive. This wasn't just about doing good work anymore. This was about survival in a game I'd never learned how to play. It started small. So small, I almost missed it. 3 months after Kara became my manager, she stopped including me in early planning calls. When I asked about it, she'd smile sweetly and say, "Oh, we didn't want to overload you since you're already so busy." Then my colleagues started acting strange around me. Conversations would stop when I walked into the break room. People who used to chat with me became awkward and distant, especially after spending time with Kara. One day, my teammate Alex slipped up. "Kara mentioned you don't really like collaborating with the team," he said during a project meeting. I stared at him in shock. I loved collaborating. I just believed in doing my homework first. That's when I realized what was happening. Kara wasn't just my manager anymore. She was slowly poisoning every relationship I had at work. She was painting me as cold, obsessed with work, and difficult to work with. The worst part? She was doing it with a smile on her face. In public, she was supportive and encouraging, but behind closed doors, she was spreading a narrative that I was the problem employee who didn't play well with others. The real blow came in September. I'd been working on an operations overhaul for 6 months. A complete redesign of our workflow that would save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was my baby, my masterpiece. I'd stayed late every night for weeks, running simulations and testing scenarios. The preliminary results were incredible. This project could be the biggest win of my career, especially with the CEO's year-end performance reviews coming up. Then Kara walked into my cubicle with a fake sympathetic smile. "I'm afraid we're going to have to reassign the operations project," she said, not meeting my eyes. "The executive team feels it would be better handled by someone with softer skills." Softer skills. The words hit me like a slap. I'd spent months perfecting every detail of that project, and now they were giving it to someone else because I apparently lacked soft skills. "Who's taking it over?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Blake from the sales team," she said. "He has a better relationship with the stakeholders." Blake had never run an operations project in his life, but Blake also played golf with the executives and told jokes at happy hour. Apparently, that mattered more than actual expertise. Kara was a master at playing the room. Every happy hour, every company event, every casual conversation by the coffee machine, she worked them all like a professional politician. She had a gift for making everyone feel like they were her best friend. She'd compliment people's outfits, remember their kids' names, and laugh at their jokes just a little too enthusiastically. But I was starting to see the calculation behind every smile. In meetings, she started referring to me as our little engine that could, always with a chuckle that made everyone else smile. It sounded like praise on the surface, but everyone in the room understood what she really meant. I was the workhorse, not leadership material. "Scarlett will handle the detail work," she'd say, "while we focus on the big picture strategy." Detail work, like I was some kind of data entry clerk instead of someone with 5 years of experience and an MBA. She positioned herself as the people person, the one who understood that work was about relationships, not just results. And she positioned me as the robot who didn't understand human connection. The frustrating part was that it was working. People started seeing me exactly the way she wanted them to see me. Dan from accounting cornered me in the break room on a Thursday morning. He looked around nervously before speaking in a low voice. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," he said, stirring his coffee slowly, "but Kara's been talking to the executives about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of talking?" "She's been hinting that you're," he paused, searching for the right words, "kind of a liability with clients. Says you're too intense, too focused on the technical details. She thinks you might make clients uncomfortable." I almost laughed out loud. Me, a liability with clients? I was the one who had fixed the last 3 client disasters when everyone else had given up. I was the one who stayed on the phone until midnight, walking clients through complex problems. But I could see the brilliance in Kara's strategy. She wasn't directly attacking my work quality. That would be too easy to disprove. Instead, she was attacking my personality, my social skills, my ability to connect with people. Things that were much harder to measure and defend. "Thanks for telling me," I said to Dan. "I appreciate the heads up." That night, I sat in my apartment thinking about everything Dan had said. This wasn't about friendship anymore. This was about survival. I remembered something the CEO had mentioned in passing during a company meeting 6 months ago. He'd talked about a massive reorganization coming at the end of the year, with new roles and responsibilities determined by hard performance data, not politics or personal relationships. Hard performance data. That was my specialty. Sitting at my kitchen table that night, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight Kara's political games on her terms. I couldn't win that battle. She was too good at it, and I frankly didn't have the stomach for office politics. But I could win on performance. I could make my results so undeniable, so impossible to ignore, that even Kara couldn't spin them into something negative. I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my personal drive. I labeled it Receipts. Every project I completed, every problem I solved, every dollar I saved the company, it would all go in there with timestamps and documentation. If Kara wanted to play games, fine. But she was about to learn that some games could only be won with facts. And I had a lot of facts on my side. I started tracking everything. Every bottleneck I cleared, every cost-saving measure I implemented, every late-night fix that kept a project on schedule. But I didn't blast it in emails or announce it in meetings. I just kept meticulous records in my private folder. When I streamlined the vendor approval process and cut processing time by 40%, I documented it with before and after screenshots. When I identified a software bug that was costing us 3 hours of productivity per day, I logged the discovery, the solution, and the time saved. My work became laser-focused on measurable outcomes. Instead of just working hard, I worked strategically. Every task I took on had to contribute to something that could be quantified and tracked. The beautiful thing about data is that it doesn't lie. Kara could spin my personality any way she wanted, but she couldn't argue with numbers. She couldn't claim that saving the company $50,000 was actually a bad thing. I started timing my contributions so they showed up in the company's project tracking software. Every email I sent solving problems went through the official channels where they'd be automatically logged and time-stamped. Slowly, methodically, I was building an unshakable case for my value to the company. The real test came in October. Kara had forgotten to finish a crucial client report before the quarterly business review. It was due first thing Monday morning, and she realized Friday afternoon that it wasn't done. She stood by my desk looking panicked. "Scarlett, I hate to ask this, but would you mind staying late to finish the Morrison Industries report? I know it's last minute, but..." I could have said no. I could have pointed out that it was her responsibility, not mine. But I had a better plan. "Of course," I said with a smile. "I'll take care of it." I stayed until 11 p.m. that Friday night, perfecting every chart and graph in that report. I made sure it was brilliant, the kind of analysis that would make executives sit up and take notice. Then I sent it to Kara with a timestamp showing exactly when I'd completed it. Monday morning, Kara presented the report to the leadership team. She got praise for the excellent analysis and insightful recommendations. She never mentioned that I'd written every word of it, but that was okay, because the company's project tracking system showed exactly who had logged into the Morrison file that Friday night. And it wasn't Kara. I started offering small, helpful solutions in cross-departmental meetings. Nothing flashy or attention-grabbing, just practical ideas that made everyone's job easier. When the marketing team complained about getting conflicting data from different departments, I quietly suggested a standardized reporting template. When the HR team mentioned struggling with onboarding timelines, I shared a workflow automation I'd developed for my own projects. When the sales team needed better client tracking, I pointed them toward a system integration that would save them hours every week. Each suggestion was implemented within days. Word started spreading that if you had a process problem, Scarlett Turner could probably solve it. Department heads began reaching out to me directly, bypassing Kara entirely. I kept my tone light and non-threatening. I wasn't trying to take over anyone's territory or make anyone look bad. I was just being helpful. But each solved problem expanded my network inside the company. The head of marketing mentioned my reporting template in a leadership meeting. The HR director credited my workflow suggestion for improving their efficiency metrics. The sales manager told the CEO how much time my integration idea had saved his team. Slowly, I was becoming visible to people who mattered, and they were seeing me as a problem solver, not a problem. During November's operations update meeting, something shifted. The CEO was reviewing departmental efficiency reports when his eyes lingered on our section. Our department had shown a 15% improvement in productivity over the quarter. Kara smiled and nodded like she'd personally engineered the improvement. But I caught something in the CEO's expression, a flicker of curiosity, like he was trying to figure out what had caused such a dramatic change. His eyes moved around the room, landing on different team members before stopping on me. For just a moment, we made direct eye contact. I gave a small professional nod, and he returned it. "Impressive numbers," he said to the room in general. "I'd like to understand what's driving this improvement." Kara jumped in immediately. "We've been focusing on team collaboration and streamlined communication," she said, "building stronger relationships across departments." The CEO nodded, but I noticed he was still looking at the specific project metrics on his screen. The beauty of data is that it tells a story. And if he looked closely enough at which projects had driven those efficiency gains, he'd see a pattern. He'd see my name attached to most of the major improvements. Kara's next move was clever. I had to give her credit. She scheduled me for a mandatory client site visit on the same day as an important executive roundtable about the year-end reorganization. The kind of meeting where decisions got made about who was leadership material. "I'm so sorry," she said with fake sympathy. "I know you'd love to attend the roundtable, but the Springfield client specifically requested you for the site visit. Your technical expertise is just so valuable to them." It was a trap. If I went to the client site, I'd miss the crucial leadership meeting. If I tried to skip the client visit, she could claim I wasn't committed to customer service. But I'd been expecting something like this. I called the Springfield client directly and explained the scheduling conflict. They were happy to move our meeting to the afternoon. Then I rearranged my entire day to attend both events. The roundtable was everything I'd hoped it would be. The CEO asked thoughtful questions about process improvements and efficiency metrics. I contributed meaningful insights while staying respectful and professional. Then I drove to Springfield and delivered exactly what the client needed. Kara's forced smile when I updated her about both successful meetings was almost worth the 16-hour day. Something fundamental started changing in the office dynamics. People began asking for my advice directly, instead of going through Kara first. When the facilities team needed help optimizing office space, they came to me. When the IT department wanted input on software upgrades, they included me in their planning meetings. The whispered conversations around my desk changed tone completely. Instead of gossip about my work habits, I heard fragments like, "Did you see how she fixed the inventory system?" And "She found a way to cut the approval process in half." Kara's irritation became harder to hide. Her laugh got sharper and more forced. Her compliments to me in meetings sounded increasingly hollow. She was losing control of the narrative she'd worked so hard to build. The most telling moment came when Blake, the guy who'd taken over my operations project, quietly asked if I could review his work before the final presentation. He was struggling with the technical details and knew he was in over his head. I helped him, of course. But the irony wasn't lost on me. The project that was supposedly better handled by someone with softer skills still needed my technical expertise to succeed. People were starting to see the difference between style and substance. The breakthrough moment came during a budget review meeting with senior leadership. The CFO was going through cost-saving initiatives when he highlighted a procurement change that had saved the company $47,000 in the third quarter. "This vendor consolidation strategy was brilliant," he said, looking around the room. "Whoever came up with this really understands our cost structure." Kara started to smile, probably preparing to take credit, but the CFO continued reading from his notes. "It says here the recommendation came from Scarlett Turner," he said, looking directly at me. "Excellent work, Scarlett. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need more of." I simply nodded and thanked him professionally. But I watched Kara's jaw tighten just slightly. She hadn't even known about that particular cost-saving measure because I'd submitted it directly through the company's suggestion system, not through her. After the meeting, 2 other executives mentioned different improvements they'd seen with my name attached. Word was getting around at exactly the right level. For the first time in months, I felt like I was being seen for what I actually contributed, not for Kara's version of who I was. Kara's desperation became obvious when she tried to weaponize HR against me. She scheduled a concerned manager meeting with Human Resources, claiming she was worried about my well-being. "I think Scarlett might be burning out," she told them, according to what Dan heard through the office grapevine. "She's working excessive hours, seems isolated from the team, and I'm not concerned about her mental health. Maybe we should reduce her responsibilities to help her find better balance." It was a masterful move, really. She was trying to reframe my strong performance as a mental health issue, which would give her grounds to limit my role and responsibilities right before the year-end reorganization. But HR did their due diligence. They reviewed my performance metrics, attendance records, and even conducted informal conversations with colleagues who worked with me regularly. What they found was a consistently high-performing employee with no signs of distress or declining work quality. When they interviewed me, I was honest about my work style, but emphasized that I felt energized by challenging projects, and was committed to delivering results. I also mentioned how much I enjoyed collaborating with other departments on process improvements. The investigation quietly faded away when HR found no evidence to support Kara's concerns. December arrived with the quarterly performance data, and the numbers told a story that no amount of political maneuvering could change. My individual output was nearly double the team average. My project completion rate was perfect. The cost savings from my initiatives totaled over $200,000 for the year. Kara's numbers, by contrast, were mediocre at best. Her projects came in on time, but rarely exceeded expectations. Her cost management was adequate, but not innovative. The contrast was glaring when the data was laid out side by side. People started connecting the dots. The department's improved efficiency ratings, the successful client projects, the cost-saving innovations, they weren't coming from the manager who gave motivational speeches about work-life balance. They were coming from the workaholic who stayed late and focused on results. I heard fragments of conversations in the hallway. "Did you see the performance rankings? And no wonder our department looks so good this year." The beautiful thing about letting data speak for itself is that it doesn't require self-promotion or office politics. Numbers are just numbers, and mine were exceptional. Even Kara couldn't argue with mathematics. Rumors started circulating that the CEO was conducting private one-on-one meetings to plan the year-end reorganization. People speculated about who was getting promoted, who might be transferred, and what the new structure would look like. When I got called into the CEO's office on a Wednesday afternoon, my heart raced. This was it, the moment that would determine my future at the company. But instead of a performance review or criticism, he asked me something I didn't expect. "Scarlett, I've been reviewing our interdepartmental efficiency, and I'm curious about your perspective. How do you think we could improve communication and collaboration across teams?" It wasn't a gotcha question or a test. He genuinely wanted my input. For the next 30 minutes, we discussed workflow optimization, resource allocation, and leadership development. He asked thoughtful follow-up questions and took notes on my suggestions. As I walked back to my desk, I realized something important had just happened. He wasn't evaluating my current performance. He was evaluating my potential for leadership. The conversation had felt less like an employee review and more like a strategic planning session between colleagues. Kara's behavior took a sharp turn in the final weeks of December. Suddenly, she was overly friendly, almost desperate in her attempts to connect with me. She invited me to lunch, complimented my outfits, and started accidentally copying me on emails where she praised my work to senior leadership. "I've always admired your dedication," she said during one awkward coffee break conversation. "You really are the backbone of this team." It was too little, too late, and we both knew it. But I played along, staying polite and professional. There was no point in being petty when I could see the finish line ahead. She even tried to take partial credit for my development as a team member. "I'm so proud of how much you've grown this year," she told me with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My mentorship style really seems to work well with analytical personalities like yours." I just nodded and thanked her for her support. What else could I do? In a few days, we'd all know where we stood. Until then, I could afford to be gracious. The desperation in her voice told me everything I needed to know about how confident she felt about the upcoming announcements. The final all-hands meeting of the year was scheduled for December 20th. Everyone knew this was when the reorganization would be announced. Promotions, demotions, transfers, and new reporting structures would all be revealed in one session. The tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a knife. People whispered in small groups, speculating about their futures. Some looked confident, others worried. A few, like Kara, seemed to be putting on a brave face while anxiety showed in their eyes. I tried to stay focused on my work, but concentration was nearly impossible. Every email notification made my heart jump. Every conversation in the hallway seemed to pause when I walked by. The night before the meeting, I sat in my apartment reviewing everything that had led to this moment. The humiliation in the conference room, the months of subtle sabotage, the countless late nights building an undeniable case for my value. Whatever happened tomorrow, I knew I'd given everything I had. I'd played the game with integrity and let my work speak for itself. That had to be enough. But as I tried to fall asleep, one question kept running through my mind. Would it be enough? The conference room was packed. Everyone from senior management to entry-level employees crowded around the large table and lined the walls. The CEO stood at the front with a presentation remote in his hand and a slight smile on his face. "Thank you all for an exceptional year," he began. "The company has exceeded every major goal we set 12 months ago. Our efficiency is up, our costs are down, and our client satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high." He clicked to the next slide, which showed various performance metrics. I spotted several areas where my projects had contributed to the improvements, but I tried to keep my expression neutral. "As promised, we're implementing a new organizational structure based on performance data and leadership potential," he continued. "These decisions were made objectively, using measurable criteria rather than subjective opinions." Kara sat 3 seats away from me, her back straight and her hands folded on the table. She looked confident, but I could see tension in her shoulders. "I want to recognize those whose performance and reliability carried this company through a challenging year," the CEO said, advancing to another slide. My heart hammered against my ribs as I waited for what came next. "Our new director of operations will be Scarlett Turner." The words hit me like lightning. Around the table, people turned to look at me with surprise and recognition. Some faces showed genuine happiness. Others looked shocked. Kara's expression was frozen somewhere between confusion and disbelief. Applause filled the room, and I managed to nod and smile while my brain tried to process what had just happened. "Director of Operations, I'd been promoted 2 levels above my current position," the CEO continued. "Scarlett will be leading a streamlined operations team focused on efficiency and innovation. She'll have direct oversight of process improvement, vendor relations, and interdepartmental collaboration." More applause. I caught Dan's eye across the room, and he gave me a huge grin and a thumbs up, but the CEO wasn't finished. "This new structure will include some of our existing managers reporting to the operations director to ensure better coordination and communication." That's when I realized what was coming next, and my stomach did a small flip. Kara Williams will be transitioning to Senior Operations Manager, reporting directly to Scarlett. The room went completely silent for a beat before polite clapping resumed. I looked at Kara, and for a moment, I saw past all the politics and manipulation to something raw and human. She looked stunned, like someone had just told her that gravity had stopped working. Her face was frozen in a mask of professional composure, but her eyes showed the shock and humiliation she was trying so hard to hide. The woman who had spent months undermining me, who had laughed at my work ethic and called me sad, was now going to be reporting to me. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. The CEO moved on to announce other changes in the organization, but I barely heard them. My mind was spinning with the magnitude of what had just happened. Not only had I survived Kara's attempts to sabotage me, but I'd been promoted to a position where she would be my direct report. After the meeting ended, people approached me with congratulations. Some seemed genuinely happy for me. Others were clearly trying to position themselves well with the new leadership structure. Kara didn't approach me at all. She gathered her things quickly and left the room without making eye contact with anyone. The days following the announcement were surreal. People who had barely acknowledged me before suddenly wanted to schedule coffee meetings and collaboration sessions. My email inbox overflowed with congratulations and requests for meetings. Kara's behavior was the most dramatic change. Her emails to me became excessively formal and respectful. Instead of the casual, slightly condescending tone she'd used before, every message was carefully worded and professional. She no longer copied senior executives on emails about team updates. She stopped hosting informal strategy sessions without including me. The power dynamic had flipped completely, and she was clearly struggling to adjust. During our first official one-on-one meeting, she was polite but distant. We discussed her current projects and responsibilities without any mention of our previous relationship or the way she'd treated me. I kept the conversation focused on work and moving forward. There was no point in relitigating the past or making her feel worse than she already did. But I won't lie, there was a certain satisfaction in watching her carefully consider every word before speaking to me. 6 months later, I settled into my new office and reflected on everything that had changed. The operations team was running more smoothly than ever. Our efficiency metrics were industry-leading, and client satisfaction was at record highs. Kara had actually become a competent senior manager once she stopped focusing on office politics and started concentrating on actual work. Our professional relationship was cordial, if not warm. I never mentioned that humiliating conference room meeting where she'd called me sad for working hard. I never threw her past behavior in her face, or made her feel small the way she'd tried to do to me. Instead, I focused on building a team culture where results mattered more than politics, where hard work was valued instead of mocked, and where people were judged by their contributions rather than their ability to work a room. My final thought, as I reviewed the quarterly reports showing another round of exceptional performance, was simple. When you know your worth, you don't have to shout about it. You don't have to play political games or tear others down to build yourself up. You just have to let your work speak for itself. And sometimes, that voice is louder than any laugh in a conference room.